Hi everyone, and welcome to Face the Future's podcast, Skincare and Beyond. I'm Julia, and today I'm joined by a member of the Dermalogica team. If you're into skincare, no doubt you've heard of Dermalogica. It's the go-to professional skincare brand that's out there. What makes them different? Because there's quite a few. Well, they're all about skin health, not just about skin trends. So there's lots of trends out there that we'll talk about as well, and making sure that people put the right things on their skin. So today I'm actually joined by Victoria,
Hello.
Who is the Education Manager. Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So we're going to be talking about all things SPF. But before we do that, really, if there's anything to know about skincare, you know it. Mm-hmm. You've been a therapist for years and you've been training professional therapists. You've been delving into the science behind the brand and behind all the products for a long time as well. And actually, you're going to share a couple of highlights with us. You're going to be talking to us about what's new and hopefully spill some additional insights along the way. So let's get straight into it. SPF sun protection. So Face the Future, we've done 2 YouGov surveys now, one last year and one this year. And the most recent results from this year's survey show us that less than half, I think we said it was about 45% of the UK wear sunscreen every day or most days. What's your views on that?
It doesn't surprise me. It's disappointing. I think we've come a long way in terms of skincare and sun care education. I think there's a lot more awareness about the importance of protecting the skin from the sun or UV rays. So I think a lot of skincare enthusiasts will know that if they want to have their best, healthiest skin and prevent things like premature aging, fine lines and wrinkles, pigmentation and skin cancer, then they will automatically use an SPF every day in their regimen, and it becomes their staple. But I think also, as it shows, more than half the population, it's only something that they think about when it's sunny, when they go on holiday, and don't necessarily understand or see the importance of wearing it every day, unfortunately.
Yeah. There seems to be this thought process in people's mind that if it's cloudy or we have work from home days now, we're indoors, that we don't need to use an SPF. Yeah. Is that true?
No. So I think that the main piece of education is understanding the ultraviolet radiation that we're exposed to. So typically, an SPF is designed to stop you burning. So that's really important. And you're only likely to burn when it's hot and sunny in the summer or in a hotter climate. However, that's just one spectrum of ultraviolet radiation. So UVB, which is often nicknamed the burning ray. So that is a ray that is at a higher strength in the summer, nearer the equator, hotter climates. So when you can feel that heat, you know you're likely to burn. So it kind of triggers you to protect your skin from burning, which of course is important. However, what a lot of people perhaps aren't aware of is the UVA ray, sometimes nicknamed the aging ray. So it's easy to remember UVB is the burning ray, UVA is the aging ray. And UVA rays are actually the same strength from dusk till dawn. They're a longer wavelength, so you don't feel it. So in context, UVB is a short, high energy wavelength. So you actually feel the heat and the burn on your skin, where UVA, you don't feel it on you at all. So you're not aware of it. Not only is UVA the same strength from dusk till dawn, it's the same strength all year round. Okay. It's also the ray that penetrates glass and windows. So if you are in an office, if you sit next to a window at home, if you're in the car, UVA penetrates that glass or that window. And as it's a longer ray, it penetrates deeper into the skin. So UVB sits more superficially and burns the superficial epidermis. UVA can penetrate into the dermal tissue where all your collagen is and cause that collagen breakdown and degradation. But it's important to note that both rays can cause skin cancer and both can cause skin damage.
And UVA doesn't differ, does it, depending on the country that you're in or how close you are to the equator? No. It's the same across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that is why for us at Dermalogica, we would always educate our customers to wear a sunscreen every day in order to protect against burning, but also that UVA. So that's that kind of year-round protection. And I always like to think of it as daylight defense rather than sun protection, because it doesn't have to be sunny to get skin damage from UV rays.
Okay. So let's just talk about that daily usage. If I go running, for example, I'll get up in the morning and I'll be running with my dog. If it's slightly dark outside because it's winter, I wouldn't put an SPF on. But as soon as we get into spring and summer, I would spray myself with an SPF. Should we be putting SPF on even when it's you said dusk to dawn, you know, how light should it be before you say, I do need to put an SPF on?
I think if it's light, so if it's still dusk or if it's, you know, just coming up for the sunrise, I think you'd be fine.
Yes.
But obviously if it is in those spring and summer months, you know, the sun rises very early, it goes down very late. So yeah.
In terms of the research behind all the facts and figures that we know now, do you think that there's any additional research that's being carried out at the moment, or any research that you're aware of that actually has changed that understanding around SPF and daily use?
Yeah, I think the understanding of UVA, the fact that it does penetrate glass, it penetrates cloud, and windows. So I think there more awareness of that. I think also we've talked about UVA and UVB, but also blue light. Yes. So that's also on that light spectrum. So within the homes, that comes from screens and devices. And there is new research that shows that blue light, or high energy visible light, can also penetrate very similarly to UVA. So it can cause what we call free radical damage in the skin and longer term collagen breakdown issues, pigmentation. So there's definitely some newer research into other types of light that causes aging and damage on the skin. And there have been studies done. I was looking at a study recently that showed that those who are wearing an SPF daily have around 24% less aging issues on their skin compared to those that don't.
I always remember seeing that photograph of the lorry driver. Yeah. You know, you could see the half face where that had the exposure to the sun, and the part of the face that hadn't been exposed to the sun. But again, to be really honest, in terms of the blue light, it's probably only the last 2 years, I think, that we've started knowing or hearing about the damage that blue light does to the skin, where before that it wasn't really mentioned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think in terms of looking after your skin, you know, at Dermalogica, we always promote skin health, not perfection. Your skin will age, you will get lines and wrinkles, it will start to become less elastic, etc. But that lorry driver image that you highlight, it shows you the natural aging process on the one side and the extreme premature aging on the other. It's about aging in a healthy way as well, so that we can prevent that extreme collagen damage, pigmentation, sagging, thickening of the skin that you get from UV exposure in particular.
I guess what we want to do is try to encourage people to make sure they use SPF every day.
Yes.
In terms of products, again, I remember as a child, if you put any SPF on, it was really thick. Mm-hmm. It took you for hours to rub it into your skin. Is there any new types of SPF products that you're aware of that just make it easier to wear SPF every day?
Yeah, I think what's really exciting in terms of SPF and skincare, I think in recent years, the technology in terms of formulation has really moved forward. What I would say, I've worked with Dermalogica for 23 years, and we are a very forward-thinking and innovative company. And I would say actually that our SPF formulas actually for many years have been that more modern day formula, which is actually very wearable. So we've always prided ourselves on creating SPFs for all different types of skin conditions and skin types, and also SPFs that do more than just be a sunscreen. But I think if you look at the market today, that's very trending to have an SPF that is multifunctional. So first of all, being wearable. So essentially feeling like a moisturizer, lightweight, hydrating, and then also maybe having other actives. So when I look at the Dermalogica SPF kind of lineup, we have quite a number.
Yes.
So whether it includes vitamin C for skin brightening and firming, we have SPFs with peptides, which will help with collagen production. We have SPFs with things like niacinamide, so they can actually help from an oil control point of view. And I think probably those with more oily, congested, acne-prone skin have probably had negative experiences of sunscreens, because your standard SPF that you can buy off the shelf is likely to be quite thick and gloopy, probably comedogenic, have artificial fragrance and perfume in, fillers. It's just about the sunscreen, which of course is important. But I think more modern day formulas are sophisticated in terms of how they feel and how they sit on the skin, and actually being able to treat your skin as well as defending from UV.
Yeah. What's your view on SPF being incorporated into things like makeup?
I think this is a tricky one. So in terms of having SPF in makeup, that's great, but don't rely on that for your UV defense. Mostly because you're not going to be putting enough on to get the SPF. So for example, if you had an SPF, typically in a foundation, you probably got a low SPF, maybe a 15, maybe a 20. We wouldn't recommend that you go below an SPF 30 in terms of actually getting a decent coverage. And then if you were, putting on foundation, the reality is in order to get the SPF on the bottle, whatever formula you're using, you need around about half a teaspoon of product to cover your face and neck. So you've probably seen videos on social, if you were to take that amount of foundation, it's probably about 3 or 4 times the amount you'd actually want to put on, because you'd be caked in it. Yeah. SPF in makeup is fine, but don't rely on it for that level of protection. Rather, it's just an added bonus that you're topping up the SPF you've put on underneath.
Does that apply then? Because there's SPFs that have got like a tint to them. So you've got your coloured SPFs.
Yes.
How does that work?
For example, I would say most SPFs that have a tint, they're probably mineral based, or what we call a physical sunscreen, as opposed to a chemical. And if they weren't tinted, they would probably look quite white on the skin. So for example, we have a couple of mineral sunscreens. So I refer to the Skin Perfect Primer SPF 30. So that has a tint. It looks like a tinted moisturizer. If it didn't have that tint, it would probably look quite white when I applied it. That's probably where the tinting comes in. But equally, if it is just a general tint, it's quite nice, because then it gives you that kind of no makeup look, or that kind of lighter coverage. I personally prefer that myself. I don't really wear a heavier foundation, but it just helps even out the skin tone.
Yeah, I wear a coloured SPF if I'm out and about. If I'm at home, it'll just be a plain one. But yeah I was saying a coloured one's better. There's so much choice out there, isn't there? Is there anything new in terms of formulations that you're aware of that you can share with our customers?
There's a couple of things. I think something that's quite new that's being talked about at the moment is something called heat aging. So we often talk about the damage that comes from the sun or from the UV rays. But there's also kind of more fresher research around the subject of heat aging. So of course you get heat from the sun when it is hot. The world is a much hotter place, so we do have rising temperatures. But even thinking about the influence of heat on the skin in terms of central heating, as well as climate, even hair dryers, whether you do hot yoga or sauna steams. And actually all of these kind of heating elements can also lead to premature aging. So our latest product for SPF is the Biolumin C Heat Aging Protector. So you have vitamin C in there, which helps to brighten and firm the skin, but we've got a thermoradiance complex. So you've got a complex of ingredients that actually defend against heat aging, as well as the broad spectrum sunscreen protecting against the UV elements. So that's something that's a little bit new and different. And I don't think anyone else is really talking about heat aging. And we've got some amazing clinical before and afters. So even though it's an SPF product, one of the before and afters we have on someone who has quite a fair skin, freckly skin with quite a red undertone, just from using that SPF moisturizer for a month, once a day, the redness underneath has gone. So it's targeted the heat aging within the skin, and then also evened the skin tone and hyperpigmentation.
Okay. So again, I mentioned that we'd done a survey. We've done the 2 surveys. The most recent survey found that more people in the UK want their sun protection to provide hydration at 40% rather than anti-aging benefits at 32%. What's your thoughts on that?
It's quite an interesting one because just by wearing an SPF, you are getting your quote unquote anti-aging benefit anyway. Yes. My professional advice would always be, if anyone is concerned with age prevention, wear an SPF every day. It's the best thing you can do for your skin, no matter your retinols, your acids, your peptides, your SPF, because it is actually preventing collagen breakdown and premature aging. So whether you're concerned about getting anti-aging benefits from your SPF or not, just the sunscreen itself and using it is giving you anti-aging benefits. And then I think the hydration element comes back to the wearability. I understand, if you're going to wear a product every day that has an SPF in it, you want it to sit comfortably on the skin. You don't want it to be thick, heavy or gloopy. So looking for that sophisticated formula, things like hyaluronic acid, ceramides within an SPF. So it just feels like a really great moisturizer. It's almost, you're not even really aware that it has a sunscreen. Perhaps you might smell it a little bit in the product. But other than that, from a wearability point of view, modern day formulas can be super hydrating, just like a moisturizer. Yeah.
So where would you place an SPF on the anti-aging spectrum in terms of if you've got things like Botox and fillers at one end, and then obviously you don't wear anything at the other end? What's your view on that?
I actually think that the sunscreen is the number one anti-aging product. Now, at Dermalogica, we don't like to use the term anti-aging so much because your skin will age, and that's fine.
Now,
active aging, skin aging management, reducing premature aging. It is the number one product for sure. And sometimes I feel like people will spend a lot of money on retinols, acids, peels, having Botox, whatever it might be. But if you're not using an SPF, it's almost a waste of money, because the reality is every minute of UV exposure will be damaging your skin. So it's almost a pointless investment. So for me personally, I would always put my money on a really good SPF. So if you invest there and find one that you enjoy using, that maybe has some additional benefits, whether you like a vitamin C SPF or a peptide SPF as we have, the irony is you're less likely to need those other actives or injectables, for example, because you're looking after your skin and actually preserving its health and its youth.
Yeah. I guess that leads me on to a question around reapplication.
Yes.
So even people that are really good with applying their skincare every day and using SPF every day would only apply it once. Is there any new formulas? Is there anything that is available on the market that you think makes it easier for people to reapply when they've gone and had a treatment, or when they put the makeup on and you're at work during the day?
I think there's two aspects to that question. So first of all, how much sun exposure, daylight exposure are you having in one day? So for example, at the moment, my typical day, I might not actually be outside or exposed to daylight for probably more than an hour in total. So what I apply in the morning, I don't need to reapply. Yeah. That's different to then it's the height of the summer. I go and sit in a park for 3 hours. I'm on the beach all day. Yeah. That's when the reapplication is super, super important. So the general rule of thumb is to reapply every 2 hours when you're having prolonged exposure. And then I think if you do wear makeup and you are needing to reapply, then if you have something that's tinted, then that's, if you can easily just kind of add that and kind of top up because it's tinted. So it's a bit like just topping up your foundation. I do think sprays and mists that are available on the market are a good idea. I wouldn't rely on them as your kind of base layer, but I would say if you've got a spray or a mist for a top up, it's better than not topping up at all, but make sure you've got a decent base, and you're just using it as a top up. Yeah. Also, what you will see on most formulas, it will tell you to apply it 30 minutes before. Yes. And what a lot of people do is they go to the park, they go to the beach, then they start applying their sun cream and they've actually already been exposed for 20, 30 minutes. So the damage is already done. So when you're using a typical chemical sunscreen, as the majority are, particularly for body you need to apply that 30 minutes before. It needs to soak into the skin so it's ready to work and start absorbing that UV.
So if you're applying your sunscreen before you even go out, isn't that not affecting the amount of vitamin D you get naturally?
No. So there has been research done in recent years that actually shows even if you are wearing a sunscreen, it doesn't mean that your body is not able to assimilate vitamin D. And what you have to remember is sunscreen cannot block 100% of UV. So for example, an SPF 50 will block out maximum of 97% of UV. So there's always a window for damage, if you like. So you don't need to worry about vitamin D in terms of wearing a sunscreen. And if you do have a vitamin D deficiency, that's something you would need to supplement, whether that's through medication or diet. So I'm not denying that vitamin D deficiency is definitely an issue, and it is an issue in these types of countries, but sunscreen's not going to stop that from happening naturally.
People talk about broad spectrum. Mm-hmm. Am I naive in thinking that, well, I expect that any sunscreen that I purchase would be broad spectrum?
Yes.
Is that naive?
They should be. I think it is pretty standard that there will be a broad spectrum, which essentially means it protects you from UVA and UVB because there's a broad spectrum of that ultraviolet radiation. But essentially, a good quality product, and if you're not sure, have a look on the packaging, but it will need a number of sunscreens typically within it in order to protect from that broad spectrum. However, there are some mineral sunscreens like zinc oxide, which actually protect across that broad spectrum. So it's typically chemical sunscreens. There might be 2 or 3 actual sunscreen agents in there so that you are getting that broad spectrum of defense. Whereas a mineral or physical sun cream can just have that one mineral that does actually defend. And they also can defend against blue light as well. So they're becoming more popular.
Where's Dermalogica going in terms of innovations for the future around SPF?
Well, as I said earlier, I think we are extremely forward thinking and kind of ahead of the game when you look at the array of SPFs that we have that tackle multiple different skin conditions, have those active ingredients within. I say the heat aging element is one of our kind of newest innovations. Yeah. And then I suppose as a bit of a sneak peek, if you look out for a new product over the next couple of months, which may be in a stick. Okay. So that's something that's also a little bit different, and people are looking for the ease of being able to carry that around and how you apply it. So watch this space.
Oh, fabulous! Yes, I'm excited. I think I might know about that, but I'll keep it sealed. So you talked earlier. You've been with Dermalogica for 23 years, but you've been in the skincare industry even longer than that. You must have come across loads of misconceptions. There's misconceptions about everything, but there seems to be a huge amount around SPF.
Yes.
Can you share with us one of the biggest misconceptions that you've heard in relation to SPF and one that you'd love to correct?
Oh, there's a lot. I think we have touched on one of the biggest, which is I only need it if it's sunny.
Yes.
So I think there's that understanding. The understanding of why I would need to wear it during the winter on a cloudy day, as we've covered with the UVA defense. I think also there's a misconception that if I tan, then I'm almost kind of immune. It's like, I don't need a sun cream because I don't burn. Every skin can burn, no matter the skin color. So I think there is a misconception around, the darker or more melanin rich your skin, you might not need a sunscreen, or if you tan really well. I think the biggest thing that I would say is if your skin is turning darker, it's tanning, that is a skin defense mechanism. So I always say a tanned skin is a damaged skin. Wearing sunscreen, it's not about stopping the tanning process, but it's about stopping the real accelerated drive of melanin production in the skin, which over time can then lead to that uneven pigmentation and patchiness and blotchiness and age spots and things like that. But even if you have a very dark melanin rich skin, 1, it can still burn, and 2, you do need an SPF. Even a very rich, melanin-rich skin would only have a natural SPF of around 4, maybe 6. To put that in context, if we're needing an SPF 30 or 50 to defend the skin. So all skins need that daily defense.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to some of our customer services team to get a list of some of the myths that we've heard from our own customers. And we've covered some of them already, but there's some that we haven't. So it'd be great to talk about those. What about one where they're saying that if it's a really high SPF, for example, some SPFs do have a factor 100 now, that actually it means you don't need to reapply that?
Totally disagree. In terms of kind of global formulation, you can't claim any higher than an SPF of 50. So you also can't use the term sunblock anymore. So as I said, with an SPF 50, you can block about 97% of UV light. For example, an SPF 30 is about 96%. So anything above an SPF 50, you're not really getting any more defense than you would from an SPF 50. And there's always that window of damage. So you always need to apply and reapply.
Yeah. Regardless of the factor.
Yeah, regardless, yeah.
We've talked about this, but again, a perception was that natural or mineral sunscreens are always better.
Yeah, I do disagree with that. So I think it's because chemical sunscreens, nobody likes the word chemical, but the reality is everything in the world is made up of chemicals. So chemicals aren't something to be scared of. And natural doesn't also mean better. There are plenty of poisonous and dangerous natural things in the world. The reality is with a chemical versus mineral or physical sunscreen, they just work in a different way. So very simply, if you have a chemical sunscreen, it acts like a sponge. It absorbs UV light and then releases it as heat energy through the tissue. A mineral sunscreen acts like a mirror. It reflects, it bounces off, and it sits more superficially, which is why sometimes they can have more of a white cast on the skin because they sit more superficially. One isn't better than the other. They just work differently. But it is worth noting that some individuals will not tolerate certain chemical sunscreens, just like anyone can be allergic or sensitive to anything in this world. So a mineral sunscreen might be better if you have more red skin, reactive skin, you're prone to prickly heat, things like that. Yeah. A mineral might be better.
And also, again, in terms of your choice, you talked about the white cast. I know we have customers that are saying to us, actually, I can't find the right sunscreen for me because I am a darker skin tone and I don't like to have the white cast. Yes. I mean, what we're saying is everybody should be wearing a sunscreen and it's about finding the right one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you do find that you're getting a white cast, mineral sunscreens tend to do that more so. You're probably better off with a chemical.
And finally, Victoria, you know that we love feedback from our customers here. And we did ask you to provide one question that you wanted to ask our listeners. Can you remember what that was?
I think so. I wanted to know what do people really look for in a sunscreen? What's the most kind of important thing to them?
Okay. So we asked this question on our social media channels and here are some of the comments. So as you can imagine, we had lots of comments about consistency. Some people wanted to not be too thick and not too sticky, not oily, not greasy. And you talked about that lightweight feel. They've said that. Again, loads of comments around one-tone protection, with actually a number of customers saying that ideally they'd like all sunscreens to be a factor 50 or above and obviously have that broad spectrum, the UVA and the UVB. Lots of comments about white casts. Again, we've got a lot of customers that will be trying products that don't specifically work for their skin. But actually we had one customer that said, as a person of colour, I want it not to be tinted as barely any tinted SPFs match my skin tone as well. And I know we have this issue again with foundation, don't we? Where, you can get a foundation now and it comes in like 100 different colours, where with SPF, tinted SPF, they tend to be limited to like 3 or 4 colours. So difficult. Mix, because I sometimes mix a tinted SPF, but I can imagine how difficult that would be.
Definitely.
Customers said they wanted it to be nourishing, glowing on the skin, hydrating ingredients. I said earlier that a survey found that more customers or more people in the UK wanted their SPF to be hydrating over anti-aging, nice smell, and cosmetically elegant. Is there any that you thought the customers would say that haven't come out yet?
No, I think that's probably the answers I was expecting, because at the end of the day, you want something that is comfortable and wearable.
I thought that there would be easily absorbable in there, because that's what I want, something that absorbs quite quickly so I can get on with my day. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us, Victoria. It's been lovely to speak to you. I've learnt loads and found the conversation really interesting, and I'm sure that our listeners will too. For anyone that wants to know more about Dermalogica, please just visit our website, facethefuture.co.uk, and you'll also be able to shop some of the products there as well. And then finally, thank you for listening. Remember to follow us on whichever platform you listen to our podcast, and also to make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for listening, and see you again at our next podcast for Face the Future Skincare and Beyond. Thanks, everybody.